And it's wonderful that we all gathered here to talk about what we all do in this field. And there's something not really wonderful with my microphone, so let's hope it works. It's swaying a bit. My name is Katarina Rolfsdotter. I am I'm an expert moderator in the field of sustainability and also a podcast host and also EU Climate Pact ambassador. So I'm delighted to be here today. And this session is hosted by, of course, as you know, the Saint-Gobain Sustainable Construction Observatory, together with the World Green Building Council. And again, this is the implementation COP. So we will hear a lot about implementation here today. And we're here at the Building and Cooling Pavilion. It doesn't actually feel very cool today, but we will power through. And it is a bit sticky, but what do you do? It's COP. And the pavilion is hosted by the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction and the UNEP Cool Coalition. So we come together in a very decisive decade. We all know this, right? And the theme here is very timely. It's driving sustainable construction forward, pathways and priority actions for transformative change across the value chain. So this is indeed the implementation phase we're talking about here. So before we start our discussions, let's walk through the agenda a bit. First, we'll go for the fireside chat here with these wonderful people sitting next to me. And then we're going to move into an engaging panel discussion. And we will talk about all across the construction value chain. And then this session will open up into a 25-minute interactive segment. And we will start by introducing some front row commentators, their insights. So, when we finish, it's going to be with some closing remarks from Yves-Laurent Sapoval, who is the Ministerial Delegate for Sustainable Cities and Urban Envoy, Ministry of Territories, Ecology and Housing, France. So now, without further ado, I'm going to sit down here. And of course, you all know the guests sitting next to me. And it's wonderful to have Benoit Bazin, the Chairman and CEO of Saint-Gobain, and Christina Gamboa, who are the CEO of the World Green Building Council. So, Benoit, let's start with you, of course. You're launching the Sustainable Constructions Observatory's action paper today. Let's try this. Maybe they got it to work. Otherwise,
does it work? Yeah, it works. Perfect.
It works. So, and Christina, you are the World Green Building Council have recently led a collaborative effort with multiple stakeholders through the building's breakthrough process. So we're going to talk about two very interesting products or papers and reports coming out here. So you launched an interim report on this, introducing new definitions and principles for near zero emissions and resilient buildings. So I'd like to start my first question here by asking you about the objectives behind those two initiatives. What are they what are they aiming and trying to achieve? So would you like to start, Benoit?
Of course. Thank you very much, Katarina, and good morning. Welcome to everyone. You know, for us, this action paper, it's both a milestone and a starting point. We know all the challenges and the opportunities that we have to transform the construction sector. We know what is at stake in terms of well-being of billions of people, of course, also in terms of environmental balance for the planet, in terms of CO2 emissions, in terms of natural resources, in terms of waste. So there is a huge impact of the built environment. The successes that we would like to define in how to make sure that sustainable construction becomes mainstream construction all over the world, that it becomes part of everyday projects and criteria when you have a construction job site. We must also value the risk and the returns of sustainable construction and also the risk of no action. So it's very important with the right time horizon. And ultimately, it means that putting health, well-being of the people, resilience, environmental protection, restoration also of the environment, and economic prosperity at the heart of sustainable construction. I would say that I'm on the positive side because we have seen a lot of momentum in the last 10 years. I would say the awareness has changed dramatically. It's enormous. We have seen it during the plenary ministerial session yesterday. So an incredible work has been done with the building breakthrough, a lot of mobilization throughout the sector, yet the value chain is still quite fragmented, siloed, and we know that to scale up and to speed up, we need this kind of collaboration and to join forces. So this action paper, the objective is truly a call for action, a step change on the mobilization of the sector. It does require a systemic change in how we design, how we build, how we retrofit and renovate, and we must act all together on every single opportunity. So the role of this action paper, and I'm sure we'll describe it in more details, is to help the value chain make that shift, making sure that the observatory, all the 6 priorities for action that we have defined are well entrenched in the minds of the actors with highest priority and the highest potential to drive transformation and scale solutions. So the goal is truly to build a foundation for alignment across the sector and be very pragmatic in order to implement, execute, which is the goal of COP30.
Thank you very much indeed, Benoit. So Christina, please tell us a bit about your interim report and what you're trying to achieve.
Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And building on what Benoit was just saying around alignment, this is precisely where this report we put out fits in. And to understand the objectives of the breakthrough agenda, you have to go back to COP26, where it was launched. It was a global initiative to accelerate the deployment of clean technologies and accelerate ambitious policy implementation around key sectors, which go around power, transport, steel, hydrogen, and buildings. And all of that breakthrough agenda is now incorporated in what the action agenda is today, that is being launched at COP30. But the report we did was, of course, the buildings breakthrough is co-led by France and the Kingdom of Morocco, is supported by UNEP's Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. And the headline is, again, the alignment to make near zero emissions and climate resilient buildings new normal by 2030. So we were asked, WorldGBC, and to deliver this vision of a definition of what that looks like. Incredible, right? We've been around like 20 years speaking about sustainable buildings, yet we still needed to come around and say, what is this? That is also it's all connected with the Declaration of Charlotte, with the ICBC, and all the discussions in the ministerials. So it took us like a review of 40 frameworks. We consulted and worked with over 200 stakeholders to establish that definition. And I want to explain anything for alignment, because when we say alignment or harmonize, it doesn't mean that everything has to look the same definition. So let me explain a little bit of what that means. It is a definition that can go across border national contexts. It can help bridge a common language for the buildings we need, and it will help achieve the 2030 breakthrough of near zero emission buildings. And I hope by then they will be the exception, they will be the norm, because the definition has some building blocks again, saying there's not one size fits all. We need to accommodate different geographies, prioritize local contexts, but that doesn't mean we can all not look towards the same ambition. So we hope that this definition is embraced by buildings breakthrough that are participating. Maybe in the next ICBC they will endorse it too, and then we can have this consensus of a unified framework that is based on success and can deliver faster action, higher transparency, comparability, and accountability. Because I think more than fragmented is that we cannot see and compare what is happening in the sector quite clearly right now.
Thank you, Christina. That is indeed a powerful statement you're giving here. So thanks for explaining the why behind these two initiatives, and let's talk a little bit more about the what, and also about the how, of course, because now you've been talking about the why. So how did you go about developing these initiatives, Benoit? How was the process?
It's we are at the core of many challenges, and Saint-Gobain operating in 80 countries, we think we have a duty, we have a responsibility to drive towards sustainable construction, major opportunities. The way we did it knowing that no one company or one actor can do it alone, is truly to collaborate. So it's been a collective journey on this action paper. We launched our observatory in 2023, so almost 3 years ago. And this action paper is truly a collective journey. We involved hundreds of voices across the value chain. We had 12 leaders and experts to review the analysis and the recommendations. We made also an international digital survey with 207 participants from 36 countries, because there will be a lot of actions driven by emerging countries as well as mature countries, so a large international survey and participants. And at the end of the day, we had a workshop at the Climate Week in New York with 35 key stakeholders to fine-tune the final document, and you have this document on your chair with 6 issues and 13 concrete action priorities. So it's very pragmatic, down to earth, mirrors exactly the collaboration that we need across the sectors. This action paper is in itself a good sign of collaboration and a new thinking on how we should take the holistic view, not only the environmental impact, but also the well-being of the people, the affordability of housing. So it's both the people and the planet. You will see in the paper that we start first with creating a common, comprehensive language and definition, exactly what Christina mentioned, to work together. We also work on demonstrating the business value of profitability within sustainable construction, making sure that these solutions are something that people truly want, not just something comply with. So it's very important that it is a request and a benefit to the people. Make sure that adaptation and resilience are also part of the equation. They are fully integrated into the sustainable construction thoughts. We have a specific look at emerging countries, exactly as you said, Christina. It's not one size fits all, to be adapted to local situation. So truly a lot of issues gathering all the impact both from the planet and the people on a very collaborative way. So the how has been a good sign, and I would like to thank, because some of the participants are here in the room, so I would like to acknowledge and thank you for all those actions, which again is a starting point, because now we will have to measure and make sure that we implement on those priorities.
Thank you very much, Benoit. It is indeed a fantastic report. I've read it, of course. It's a really, really solid work. So, Christina, your intervention here. How was it? How did you create it?
I think it's also a very similar process. I think I already mentioned we engaged with 200. I think I answered a little bit. 200 stakeholders, and we used over 40 frameworks. But those stakeholders included national governments, technical experts, and civil society organizations. And through the review of the existing frameworks, we also got like the basic foundations or the building blocks through workshops, consultations, open feedback sessions. And it was great because we got to leverage the knowledge of the network we have at WorldGBC of over 85 national GBCs and 53,000 companies behind it, because there's a lot of knowledge and expertise, and we know how to do it, but we just needed to get to the other line of how to reflect that global ambition into regional realities. So it was a challenge to get people to align and say what could be the building block of a definition that can be common to everything in the journey we've been in aligning the sector towards greater impact and transparency. The buildings breakthrough, the Declaration of Chalot, the ministerials that have been happening at the COP, and now the action agenda. So basically, I just want you to for you to take away that it is not around rigid standards, this report. It is around flexible yet ambitious roadmaps that countries can tailor to their circumstances while contributing to that transparent transformation of the built environment. In the process, basic foundations of any consultation ensure representation and ensure that there is transparency. And I think we got to a point where this definition is actionable, adaptable policy recommendations that governments can take forward to achieve those near zero emission buildings, and which is the end goal of this work, to facilitate that.
Thank you, Christina. So now that the action paper and the interim report are both launched, what is the next step? How do we go to implement this? And what is your call to action to the stakeholders and the people here in the room and maybe watching this afterwards? Benoit.
It It's a call to action, so we need now to go into the implementation phase. So it's a call to decision makers and all the industry actors, and we know it's quite fragmented, so there are a lot. For instance, decision makers to integrate actions in procurement and planning, put sustainable construction, resilience, adaptation into procurement. Companies to implement that into their portfolios in terms of businesses and actions and priorities. Experts and industry actors to develop tools, highlighting that comparison in the sector. Also insurers, all the financing sector and investors to translate and measure risk and resilience, the cost of no resilience into concrete action. So 6 priorities for engagement. It's not too many, it's 6. And we want those stakeholders to, across the value chain, to engage on those 6 issues and also the priorities for action. So, as I said, it's first interoperability, common language and a comprehensive definition of sustainable construction. In the past, we forgot a bit about the people aspect. I think it's extremely important. It was highlighted again by the governor of Para yesterday. The comprehensive so common language and comprehensive definition so that we can compare between investors. We have the people and the planet aspects. Put that into the sustainable procurement practices. Highlight also the need for data-driven governance across the different projects, across the whole life cycle analysis, the carbon chain, etc., in order to strengthen collaboration. We need regulation, and for regulation we need data, and we need long visibility on the regulation and to have a coherence on the regulation. We need to make sure that resilience and adaptation are crucial steps in the request for quotation and for projects. So the RFP, you see it's a very important priority for action, taking this holistic view on resilience and adaptation. We need to have this tailored action in emerging countries and make sure that country by country we have national plans, and they are not all the same, but we highlighted some action for the emerging countries, notably leveraging the vernacular and all the traditions within those countries. The goal also is to demonstrate the true economic profitability of sustainable construction, the cost of inaction on non-resilient construction, and we have highlighted some example of ROI, return on investment for sustainable construction. That's something we can do and we will measure. And finally, also to transform the perception of sustainable construction, to reframe sustainable construction, to have demonstration, all the showcase of the winning points, the winning victories. So that's very important, both for the planet and for the people. So all this with the collaboration spirit, so close to action on how to accelerate, how to scale, how to speed up the implementation on concrete actions. And the commitment from Saint-Gobain is to truly measure year after year how we deliver on those priorities for actions.
Thank you very much indeed, Benoit. Christina.
I think the reports speak to each other. If you, Saint-Gobain's report is quite practical, pragmatic, call to action. Ours is the same, but we were like in another, working in parallel, and they're complementary. Yeah, we were working with government stakeholders, like a wider conversation that has been happening since COP26. It's been a journey. So my call to action is the same. We're in the era of implementation. It's the moment to shift decisively towards scaling the solutions that already exist. People at the heart of the transition, making sure that we're place-based decision-making. That's why the framework of the buildings breakthrough definition is flexible. And I would say in the coming weeks, I just wanted to say there's going to be another report, another report, which will identify indicators and measurement frameworks to get those policy recommendations in a better sweet spot for governments. Because as we move to implementation, those frameworks will make us better in uniting the commitments that have been made for so many years. So we shift from the negotiations, as the call to action is here from the COP presidency, into society, into our own lives. Because in a way, you're going to see the plans to accelerate solutions being announced at this COP. The action agenda has over 100 plans to accelerate solutions. So if you look closely, WorldGBC has 3. The plan to the building efficiency and electrification and renewable integration with the IEA and C40. So buildings as a critical demand side lever. There's nothing holding us back in the energy efficiency and renewable conversation. Making sure that we partner better with GlobalABC and take the roadmaps initiative to the next level of development with national coalitions and empowering countries. And of course, making sure that the Buildings Breakthrough Agenda is a part of those plans to accelerate solutions. It has a plan on its own, and make sure that all of this adds on to the High-Level Climate Champions 5-year strategy. If you see, all of this is just momentum of building up to the moment where we can continue to improve the alignment of the sector, accelerate ambitious local action, mobilize sustainable finance flows, and implement solutions, because that's how we're going to scale sustainable and decarbonized resilient built environments.
Thank you very much, Christina, and thank you for being so passionate about this. It really shines through. So I'm confident that many of you are very curious about the action agenda, and it's here. Action paper, sorry, it's on your seats. And how about the interim report, Christina? Where can they download it?
The interim report is available at the GlobalABC website, but also at the WorldGBC website. You can easily find it.
Thank you very much, Benoit Bazin and Christina Gamboa.
Thank you so much.
So let's now move into the panel. We're going to broaden the discussion a bit and talk to representatives from different stakeholders and sectors in this field. And I have the pleasure of welcoming Joe Da Silva, Global Sustainable Development Director, Arup. Please join me and you can pick any seat, Joe. Kennedy Mateka, Director for Building Safety and Climate Resilience, Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, Kenya. Wonderful to have both of you here, Joe and Kennedy. And Jamie Ferguson, Global Director, Climate and Nature, IFC. So Jamie, choose your seat. Roxana De La Fiamore, Global Policy Lead, U.S. Green Building Council. Great to have you here, Roxana. And let's see. We will have to hand one of my to this side. Well, this is, let's see, oh, now it's working again. Excellent. All right. So, hello, everyone. Wonderful to have you here, even if it is a bit challenging in terms of the heat. We'll power through. So, let's with you, Joe, from our, I have a first question to you, Joe. So well, it's really a hop back and forth. Yeah, I've been using microphones for 20 years, and this is not normally the case. Oh well, we'll do the singer version. Maybe that's a good tip. Normally you're supposed to have it on your chin, but it might be better. Hope so. Okay, so Joe, you're a leader in the private sector from Arup, and what's your perspective of the current state of play of the themes of the building blocks, both the interim report and also the action paper? I'd like to hear more about that, particularly those relating to resilience within the construction value chain, because that's very much your field.
Thank you for the question. Arup, rather like Saint-Gobain, is a global firm. We're only in 40 countries, but we do projects in about 130 countries. So we also have a kind of global perspective. And I really welcome these two reports. The interim report that the World Green Business Council has produced, these building blocks, have got real clarity on what some basic terms mean in the industry around net zero buildings. And that enables us to have conversations across industry and actually within our own firm. So I've sent this around our firm, and it's come back with a good response. This makes sense in different countries around the world. We need that shared language. Equally, I really welcome Saint-Gobain's report, which is a different take. It's a very human take on some of the challenges that we've got to overcome in terms of collaboration. What I'm most excited about is that industry to date has focused on climate in terms of carbon. It hasn't thought at all about the consequences of climate change. So I tend not to talk about mitigation and adaptation. I talk in language my late mother would understand. I talk about the causes and the consequences of climate change. We need to think about the consequences of climate change. We are living in cities where people are getting much hotter, they're vulnerable to storms and floods, and both of these reports include resilience. And what is particularly good is that the WorldGBC report distinguishes between risk and resilience. Risk is about things we know about. It's about things we can predict and potentially manage. Resilience is recognizing that we're living in an era of uncertainty and complexity, and we actually have to think about the built environment as a system, about the dependencies and the interdependencies, and actually make it adaptive to a very different future as time goes on. So I think both are big contributions, but as Benoit said, they're milestones. They're also the beginning of something. We're just beginning, I think, to get off the bottom of the hockey stick in the built environment. And it's taken the last 10 years since COP21 to get us this far, but I anticipate we're going to take off over the next 5 or 10 years.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. Turning now to Kennedy, emerging markets and also, of course, economies in the developing countries are really indeed at the forefront of the world's urban transformation here. Rapid population growth, and you're from Kenya, and considering the strong involvements in the Building Breakthroughs agenda that you have, could you please share how today's theme surrounding the sustainable construction are unfolding across the Pan-African construction sector, because that's really your field.
Thank you very much for the question. And it's just true, and I think it's common knowledge to all of us here in the room, that the emerging markets are really coming up quite well in the global south and in particular Africa. And therefore, as we now deep dive into the conversation around sustainable construction, then there should be a special focus on how best do we prepare, or rather we do market readiness for the very market that we are keen on. And therefore, for us, in this conversation, we are very keen to see how best practices, especially at a global scale, have been harnessed, so that as we adopt these new technologies, as we bring on board revitalization processes of our value chains in the construction process, then we are walking the journey together with each and every one of you. And this is where, as much as we see the business opportunity arising, the need for enhanced collaboration in this conversation is very important. So what we are calling for is for us to continue embracing sustainable construction practices. I would always urge each and every one of us to see how best we should enhance collaborations, especially our colleagues in the global south and in particular in Africa. And I always put this context because we need to have more of their participation in most of these processes, so that they partake, so that they can be the champions of this process, so that they can even be understanding of where we are and where we are going all together. So as we see the emerging market, as we see the business opportunities, let's also see the opportunity of enhancing more collaborations with this team, so that they are part of the decision-making process, they are part of the transformation journey that we're looking at it at a global scale. Of importance is to also see how then we should build the capacity in terms of knowledge, in terms of technology, in terms of innovations. The emerging market provides that business opportunity, and it is a fact to that effect. But then let's see how then do we create that enabling environment, so that they can easily partake the innovations, the technology, and any other component that is relating to sustainable construction practice, so that we can all set and realize the targets that we have all set together. And this has been our target as a country, Kenya, as we move forward to realize the objects of the Buildings Breakthrough since its establishment during at Glasgow. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Kennedy. Turning now to Jamie, the mobilization of finance is, of course, one of the most important levers to really push to accelerate this transition in sustainable construction. From your position at IFS, could you share your thoughts on the current state of the private sector finance, and also the dimension for sustainable construction, particularly in relation to your work in emerging markets.
Thank you, Katarina, and thank you, GlobalABC, and the Cooling Pledge here for inviting us. As Katarina says, I work with the IFC, that's the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. So we're a development bank, and our focus is both on the development need in emerging markets, where homes and schools and hospitals are core to economic development, and the opportunity. IFC had a flagship report of its own 2 years ago, which identified a $1.5 trillion opportunity in emerging markets. And that comes with the jobs and the growth that is much needed in the developing world. Recognizing that half of the buildings that will exist in 2060 will be in emerging, don't exist today, and 80% of that increments in emerging markets, right? So I would applaud Benoit particularly for the specific recognition of the differentiated needs in emerging markets, because in the green and resilient buildings discussion, we often hit this sort of global north from Mars and global south from Venus conversation, because the north is built and needs to refurbish. The global south is not and needs to build. So that is a key recognition of the difference. And then I'd acknowledge both Benoit and Christina for bringing together green and resilient. This conversation has been together sufficiently until date. I'm going to eat the microphone here, folks. The conversation has not been integrated and needs to be integrated. From IFC's side, our engagement is across 125 countries that are using our EDGE Green Building Certification. That's a free public good, and it really speaks to the challenge in Benoit's report, which is a harmonized framework. So EDGE is a consistent certification that requires 20% reduction in operating energy, 20% reduction in embodied carbon, and 20% reduction in water consumption. But that is against a baseline that is very locally specific. If you're in Lagos, the baseline is housing in Lagos. If you're building warehouses in Manila, the baseline is warehouses in Manila. And so it allows for a common framework that's incorporated into green taxonomies, which is where the finance comes in, Katarina, and is a consistent, simple code, but is locally relevant and is adjusted for the situation, including all the way down to self-build housing, which is a huge piece of the development agenda. And simplified versions in India we're using are really trying to break ground there in making it possible for an individual owner and their contractor to build green with local lists of procurements of what kind of equipment and materials can work. So $125 billion has been invested in green buildings under the EDGE certification. We're now trying to do the same with our Building Resilience Index, where we're partnering across the insurance to recognize in the same way, so that insurance premiums come down when you are certified with the Building Resilience Index. We're earlier in that journey. There's only 700 million been invested under that in 30 countries, but we're hoping we can achieve the same level of adoption. The key here is the nudge. So IFC's put 14 billion of its own capital in to catalyze this market. We're training bankers, we're training construction firms, we're trying to build that capacity across emerging markets. And then we've been very grateful to the support of the UK government for a little bit of concessional capital, which has allowed us to help banks offer slightly cheaper green mortgages to, again, nudge the market to adopt.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I've had the pleasure of interviewing from IFS before in our broadcast. IFC, many acronyms. I'm so sorry, Jamie. It's really impressive what you can achieve when you really were able to get the money there. And we see, of course, also here in Belém that there is much need for reconstruction and just construction in general. So, Roxana, I'd like to hear your perspective. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay. How would you describe the current landscapes when it comes to common definitions, also framework frameworks and legislation guiding sustainable construction across the sector?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Perfect. So, thanks for the question. I think the LEED framework and other green building programs, of course, have been working together very much to establish a common definition and understanding in the market. And so we very much appreciate these efforts. And we see the importance of those to create stronger signals for the market and the financial sector. There is one very recent example I'd like to highlight, which shows really the collaborative effort to harmonize the assessment of sustainable building materials together with several partners, GBC Australia, to mention one, Living Future, the International Well Building Institute, and several others. The WorldGBC has announced in October an international partnership for sustainable building materials. And we've been discussing a lot about the importance of having common language. And such common language is very much important in that particular sector of sustainable building materials. And we know that raw material extraction, the construction sector is responsible for half of raw material extraction worldwide. And so having common tools and frameworks to really measure the impact of that is very important, and we need to avoid confusion and duplication across the value chain. And so really this partnership I just mentioned aims to align the reporting metrics. So this is just one such example, and I think there is much more efforts that needs to be done.
Thank you very much, Roxana. I'm turning back now to Joe on this side. So get the microphone, please. How would you say that these themes, especially resilience, you already mentioned resilience, which I really like, being put into practice in your work today? And what impact do you expect this focus reflected across both the action paper and the interim report, of course, as we see, to have on the wider built environment ecosystem?
Thank you. So I want to talk about two themes. You know, one on the one hand, the causes of climate change and the need to get to net zero buildings, and the other, the consequences. The world we operate in, the market we operate in, is governed by carrots and sticks. The sticks are policy and regulation and building standards, the things we have to do. The carrots are the incentives that make our clients want to do things differently. The EDGE tool that Jamie rated falls into that category. If you get a good EDGE rating, you will attract finance from IFC. That's a carrot. At the moment where we are is that we're getting, the sticks are beginning to emerge. And as soon as they emerge, the market changes very quickly. As a specific example, in London, the City of London, a few years ago, brought in the requirement to do whole life carbon assessments on all projects. And so everyone started doing them. But even more cleverly, this year they insisted on peer review of those assessments by other people in the industry. And that move means there's convergence in the industry about how we're doing those assessments. We're seeing other cities like Toronto bringing in similar things. At national level, governments in Europe in particular are leading the way and creating that environment. We're not seeing that yet in terms of resilience. The LEED, which is a rating tool, a new version is coming out that's going to incorporate resilience. That will provide a carrot because people want to have a good LEED rating for their building. And so that will start incentivizing people to want to have that. That will lead to more rents. So I think it is early days. But I think what both these reports do is they're catalysts for collaboration. There's a lovely quote in the Saint-Gobain action paper, which talks about if you don't have collaboration, you just increase misalignment. We have a moment of opportunity now to actually converge on what needs to be done and take collective action that all moves in one direction. Industry is competitive, but we've got to some extent, park that competition and actually work together, recognizing that the big challenges in the world are something we can only solve as an industry together.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. Please hand the microphone to Kennedy. So Kennedy, how do you expect the contributions from the action paper and the interim report to really be influencing the environment policy and also the regulatory system across Kenya and Africa in general?
Thank you. I think governments exist worldwide to ensure that we have proper regulatory and executional frameworks to enable market transformation and even realization of the good of the people. And within our construction sector, I would like to start off with the nationally determined contributions that every country, the best knowledge of the NDC partnership team and UNFCCC have confirmed quite a number of countries have really shown an interest in terms of submissions of the NDC commitment. In those commitments, quite a number of countries have gone into conversations around their building codes. So as we talk about policy reforms, building codes worldwide play a very key role in realization of sustainable construction agenda in this process. And therefore, for us, we want to see how we can have, as we continue to implement the building codes, that when they are given opportunity to upgrade or update or review, then all these policy recommendations, especially the arising from the Saint-Gobain and the team that has been working on these documents, then becomes an extension of the building code in one or the other. And these are some of the milestones that, and I believe quite a number of countries, as they are implementing the building code, starting with Kenya, then are going to integrate most of the recommendations that have been put forward into this. But as I said, then that's where the component in relations to collaboration and partnership comes in, so that we mainstream and integrate quite a number of things that are in this report today here, as we're implementing our building codes in different ways into the normal practice of the construction sector. And therefore, the call here in the process is that as we urge countries to keep reviewing their building codes, as we have more reports, more recommendations coming on board, let's integrate and see how best we can have the report itself, the action paper itself be integrated case by case in different countries, and that is how this action paper can influence the very various reforms, the policy reforms that we are talking about in every country. For us in Kenya, we are ready to partake most of the recommendations, align them with our policy paper in relations to green building standards, in relations to green building, in relations to the building code. As we implement the code itself, then we'll heavily rely on this action paper to ensure that we actually implement almost all the provisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Kennedy. So Jamie, how do you think the interim report and the action paper can help influence the financial mechanisms in this field, and really also the market mechanisms that enable this transition to a more sustainable construction?
Thanks, Katarina, and we're delighted to have engaged in the development of both reports, and thank you for such a collaborative approach on them. I'm going to pick up on my friend Joe's frame, I love it, of the carrots and sticks and coordination. So let's break those down a little bit. The carrots and sticks. Green buildings come with their own, from a theory of change, the joy of it, they come with their own motivation in that you get lower energy bills and lower water bills. That's fantastic. When you can also combine it with cheaper financing, that's even more powerful. The resilience piece is a little harder. And that's why we're working so closely with the insurance industry, because sadly, investment decisions and human behavior is less good at responding to a future risk than it is to an immediate cost saving. And so integrating that resilience into preferential insurance terms and better financing costs will be vital to motivate that behavior. So that combination from a theory of change is really important. I'd add to Joe's framework capacity. the world has to learn on this, and because it's a coordinational issue, the world has to learn through architects, the world has to learn through construction firms, the world has to learn through bankers. All of those things have to come together to build the supply chain and make this business as usual and just good business in all of the markets we operate in. We're working super hard on this. We've trained 10,000 engineers. We've trained, oh, I need my glasses, getting old, 2,000 bankers. We've trained 600 auditors. We've trained 3,000 edge experts, but it's just, you know, the tip of the iceberg, and capacity. And then the coordinational piece, you know, I think it's, maybe this is semantics, but it's coordination and integration. While a lot of building codes are increasingly recognizing green and resilient building, we're not going down the next layer, which is to acknowledge efforts in the construction industry and countries' efforts to decarbonize construction, both for green cement, green steel, but also alternative construction materials. And there's a real opportunity for a theory of change for the building codes themselves to drive change in those construction industries. And just to give you a sense, some of these little carrots are really cute, and they don't need to be expensive for governments. They can be non-fiscal, right? So in Peru, the building code said, look, if you build green, you can get approval for an extra floor. Who hasn't looked for approvals on a loft conversion, right? I'm a Londoner. Everyone's either trying to build up or down, right? So instantly, that moved the market. That's not a non-fiscal human behavioral reaction, moved the market. In Argentina, they said, look, you'll get half the approval time on a green building than a normal building. Instantly moves the market. So again, these carrots and sticks, as Joe nicely frames it, doesn't all have to be fiscal or expensive, but we're moving human behavior and we're moving systems.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Those are indeed very cute sticks, like you said, what you mentioned here. So, Roxana, from your perspective, how can the interim report and the action paper really help shape policies, etc.?
I wanted first to really laud the collaborative process that's been used really to develop both of those reports, because the word has been mentioned several times in this panel: collaboration. That's the name of the game, and this is how we will really be able to deliver the sustainable buildings that we need. And I think that the consensus that was built through the process of developing both report really sends a powerful signal both to the market and to financial institutions that the sector as a whole is really converging around shared expectations for what green buildings are, for performance, transparency and resilience. So I think that really needs to be highlighted. And both reports create the condition for alignment and scale. And there are three main ways in which I think these two initiatives can really shape action. And the first one is policy coherence. So both efforts, both reports really call for consistent standard and data-driven national roadmaps. And they really help in creating a clearer pathways for government to integrate sustainable construction into national targets and strategies. The second way in which these initiatives help in reshaping action is by building financial confidence, and just linking to what Jamie was saying about that natural human behavior to really value more present cost reduction than future ones. I think particularly the action paper from Saint-Gobain really helps shift that investor perception from risk to opportunity by demonstrating the economic profitability of the sustainable construction and linking resilience to value creation. And it really shows that resilience can be an enabler of long-term financial performance and not just an additional cost. And I think the third way that I'd like to mention in which this initiative can shape action is by creating market alignment. I've mentioned it already because of the participatory and cross-value chain approach that was used to develop both papers.
Thank you very much indeed, Roxana. So I have one final question from you all. Being this being the implementation COP, so I'd like to finish with a question about implementation. So what would be the one concrete action that your organizations would take based on the findings in the action paper, what's brought forward there, and also in the interim report? Or if you might prefer, what is your call to action to the viewers here and the ones that will be watching this afterwards? So please, would you like to start, Kennedy?
Thank you. I think it is high time for all of us to go out and mobilize necessary financing for this initiative. When you talk about sustainable construction, it is a cross-cutting endeavor for all of us. So it is the right time now, ladies and gentlemen, see how then we should go out so that we mobilize the necessary financing, the necessary investment, so that we can drive the agenda moving forward. And finally, I would always wish that we connect the knowledge, the capital, and the practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. So Joe, what do you say?
So I think the word I'd say is actually partnership. I think partnership goes one step beyond collaboration. I'm delighted to say that we're just finishing a report that we've partnered with Saint-Gobain to create, exploring adaptation and resilience. That's at one end of the value chain. That's Arup are in the middle of the value chain as designers and planners and engineers. Saint-Gobain are suppliers, manufacturers of materials. And right at the other end of the chain are the insurance companies. So we're committed to partnering with different people in the value chain to make a difference. My call to action is that one of our partners we announced last year is Autodesk. Autodesk designed the software that we all use. 100 million people in engineering architecture firms around the world use this software. We're collaborating with them to try and work out, can we create a step change in the industry through the use of technology in the way that we did so, that the mobile phone companies did so some years ago. That's to try and get standardization, how we think about the data in terms of net zero buildings. And anyone who's interested in that, I'd be really happy to hear from you, because the idea is to extend that as an industry-wide coalition of people, and we converge on one way of doing things that can be done efficiently in an automated way using technology that we all use already.
Thank you very much indeed. So Roxana, I'm turning now to you.
So one concrete action is the new version of LEAD that Joe mentioned earlier. It's for the first time, resilience is included in that new version. It requires all the projects to complete a climate risk assessment, prioritize hazard, and explain how they are addressed. And so in the coming year, I think one of the main concrete action that USGBC will be taking will be to drive resilience through LEAD V5 by tapping into the power of learning and collaboration or partnerships. And briefly, how will this be done? So we'll be working with the building industry, insurance and sector and other stakeholders to really improve the suite of credits that include resilience and also add to them. We will be monitoring projects using those credits and also getting feedback from practitioners on the ground, engaging experts in hazard reduction. So that's the learning part. And for the collaboration part, we'll be outreaching again to insurance and resilience experts to align our program with best practice and ensure that this new version of LEAD really responds to the market need to better assess resilience.
Sure, thank you. Look, I guess my word would be acceleration. We just got to, there's so much to do so quickly here. So under the framework of carrots and the capacity and sticks, on the carrot side, we're working hard on Article 6 aggregation models to try and get carbon credits as a carrot for green buildings. We're looking forward to announcing a new partnership on blended capital next year, again to try and drive preferred financing terms into green and resilient buildings. On the capacity side, we are developing an edge version for the operations, the operations going on within a building, and also developing a preferred provider solution for at the very smaller end of the scale for self-build housing, so it makes it simpler for individuals constructing their own to find the right fan, find the right window, find the right etc. in different geographies in the market. And then in terms of sticks, we are pushing hard on the market to get an ever-increasing adoption of Edge Advanced, which is 40% reductions rather than 20% reductions, and we're pushing for that to be a higher and higher proportion of the market.
Thank you very much indeed, Jamie. So this has been a very fruitful conversation, and thank you all for bringing your thoughts and your insights to it. And please stay in your seats because we're going to open up for some questions from the floor. And I know we have some front row, at least one front row commentator here that would like to start. So I'm going to ask to get one of the microphones. Well, Ella will help us here. I know we have Ilya Azarov, the 2026 president of the American Institute of Architects. And you have a question that I know you would like to ask. So go ahead.
Certainly. It's great to be here today. You know, Katarina, I'm really proud that the AIA is supporting these efforts. And because I heard all about the countries and number of people, the AIA, although we're from the US originally, we're in 120 countries with over 100,000 members. So what I really want to comment on first and then a question. Collective action takes leadership. And leadership is what we're seeing today in these two actions coming forward. Leadership at its best elevates all those around you so you too can have collective action in your own countries. So that's what I appreciate what's going on today. The other thing that I do want to mention about this COP as an implementation COP, you know, it's all about sticks when we're in the field. As an architect, I'm also a disaster responder. Last year alone, 120 million people were displaced around the world. That means our cities and what we do in the AEC industry is not enough. So when we talk about adaptation in these two reports, it is rather important that we do look to implementation. Because by 2040, it's 120 million people displaced unless this action takes place. So I have a question about the very first item, and it is about implementation, and truly it's about this COP and indigenous wisdom, referring to vernacular architecture and incorporating that. As the AEC industry truly embrace this, and how do we have the lever for that collective action to take place, especially the use of indigenous wisdom and vernacular architecture in this effort? And that really is what Benoit had put forward.
Thank you very much for that question. And let's see who would like to start by answering it. And I will slide over with the microphone. Benoit? Okay.
Maybe I can take this one. I think it's a very, very important question because indeed, vernacular architecture has centuries, if not more, of experience. One way to do it is to be organized and to look at it by country. If I take the example of Saint-Gobain, we used to have wide product lines, glass, plasterboard, managed by French people in Paris. Now we have country CEOs in Brazil. We have plants in Para, and they are Brazilians. They are Indonesian in Indonesia. So I think the organization, the governance itself, it's very important to look locally. And then to have the humility to think of what nature can learn, can teach us, what we can learn, and also vernacular architecture. So for us, it's very important to link with local architects. We do it in Kenya, we do it in Indonesia. I hired an architect at the board of Saint-Gobain and make sure that one example also that we do is that for the last 20 years, we had a contest for young architect students from 56 countries, 1,300 of them from 56 countries. So being very local is extremely important. If you think of circular economy, for instance, on materials, it is local by nature. You don't even go from Sao Paulo to Belém. So being very, very local and have the humility to learn is, I think, extremely important, and the curiosity. So governance in local is extremely helpful.
Thank you very much, Benoit. And then Jamie, you get another microphone.
Hey, thank you. Look, I was just going to add, so I fully endorse what Benoit says. I was going to add, it's worse than you say, because first we have to remove the perversions of imposing inappropriate design, and then we need to embrace the benefits of the historic experience, right? So if you're, and I can say this as a shamed Brit on my history, but if you're in India, the building code requirements for the size of the windows is based on the UK system of being in the northern hemisphere, of the size of the window to get enough light in the room. Joe's going to correct me, but this versus what is needed in New Delhi, right? So you've got to remove the perverse sticks and incentives, and then you've got to embrace the local as well.
Thank you, Jamie. We have, I think you were first in the second row here, and then we have a gentleman in the third row.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexander Marescu. I am the Vice President and Head of Extreme Weather at Zurich Resilient Solutions. And just want to express my appreciation and gratitude for the panel and for the questions. I'd like to offer a minor corrective to the discourse on insurance. The insurance industry does not just come in on one stage here. The insurance industry generally, we all think of the insurance industry as underwriting and policies. That's only one part of it. Where this industry comes in is it comes in on the advisory and the consulting phase. And these companies have 50, 75, in the case of my firm, 150 years of understanding what causes disruption, what causes claims, and what causes losses. And being able to form that knowledge base and pivot towards climate risk and what it is that is causing these disruptions, being able to understand what are the portfolio risks before we build, how are we investing, making risk-informed and resilience-informed investing before we even break ground, and then secondly, once we're in the built environment, how are we understanding like the physical risks, either through the portfolio analysis or through on-site assessments. So I just, I'm always having this uphill battle in respond that our work here is much more broad. So I thank the panel for bringing this up. Thank you.
Thank you for that intervention. I think let's Joe, you wanted to add.
Yes, I think it's very well put. It's absolutely necessary to solve the problem by thinking across that whole value chain, from insurers and indeed reinsurers, all the way through to actually the individual building components, because that might affect the damage. We've got to have a joined up conversation. One of the challenges we found, because this is an area I've been exploring, is that within organizations, the people engaging with insurers are very different to the people who are commissioning companies like mine to build those buildings. So we're actually trying to design out risk to minimize the amount of residual risk that an insurance company has to take up. But those conversations aren't happening because we're talking to different people in the same organization. So I think what this emphasizes is some of the things that come up in the action paper, which is that there's such a human dimension to the challenges that we're trying to face. It's not a technocratic solution. It's not just about carbon accounting. It's not just about definitions. It's actually about really thinking about who is talking to who about what. And it's not even the right organizations talking to each other. It's got to be the right people within those organizations.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Let's have a question from the gentleman standing up here in the third row. There's a microphone coming.
Hi, my name is Satish Kumar, and I represent an Indian non-profit organization called Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. And I've personally been involved with the Building Energy Code Development, India Cooling Action Plan, and we are developing, India government is developing a decarbonization for the built environment sector. And I just want to share like a couple of views, and maybe I think some folks can respond to this. So from an India perspective or from a global South perspective, one of the things that I think we are emphasizing a lot is that thermal comfort is, I think, the way to go, and not necessarily cooling, because cooling is not just energy intensive, but also a lot of people don't have the means and access to. So what that means is that companies like Saint-Gobain and others who are very focused on building envelope design becomes extremely critical. But in the process, I think what India is also realizing that its carbon footprint is not going down, because the embodied carbon aspect is actually increasing, even though the operational carbon part is not, I think, increasing to the same level. So I think this is a very fundamental issue that is not just an India issue, but a global South issue, I would say. Because how do you cool a country? How do you actually build 50-60% of the infrastructure that is not yet built? And how do you do it in a low carbon manner? Other piece, because there is US Green Building Council and others are there. One of the things, I'm a lead fellow and I'm an ASHRAE fellow as well. But one of the challenges that we see is that many of the green building or edge rating system that is there, it is not holding, I think, the building owners accountable for actual performance. It's not disclosing, I think, what is the API or what is the cooling efficiency of the building that is getting rated. And personally, I feel that unless we get down to the brass tacks and start asking some of these very, very fundamental questions, I think it's going to be a really, really tough task, I think, to help decarbonize. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that intervention. Would anybody like to comment on that? Okay, let's see if we have any more questions from the audience. There's one from the gentleman in the back.
Hi, good morning. My name is Anil Sahani. I'm Global Head of Sustainability for RICS, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. Listening to the discussion, one thing comes to my mind, which is our members. Our members practice all these ideas on the ground in real projects. One thing we come across is larger consulting and engineering organizations have various teams who can pitch in risk, embodied carbon, various other domains that actually need to be holistically considered. But what we see is in smaller firms, that's a very difficult challenge to consider all these aspects of decarbonization, insurance, risk, finance, and those kinds of things. Do you have any suggestions on how our practicing members, especially in the smaller firms, can tap into resources, case studies that can help them make these decisions?
Thank you for that question. Please hand the microphone to Jo. I think she was the fastest. Did you want to intervene too? No, good.
So both the last comment about comfort in buildings and this question are very real. We do need to really address the fundamental challenge that we need to build 80% less buildings. And that we need to build the buildings tend to be in the global south. So that's very real. We're not going to get to net zero overall if we keep building lots of new buildings. Your comment about SMEs is also really important. The reality is that big firms like mine only build some of the world, or only responsible for some of the world. A lot of construction goes on by small, medium enterprises. The Institution of Structural Engineers, which I'm a fellow of, has tackled this problem head-on for the last 3 years. And they've very specifically been taking knowledge from firms like us, the products we create and invest in through collaboration with other industry partners, and are purposefully engaging with their membership and distributing it to the SMEs. I think this is an incredibly important role for the professional institutions to play, because the professional institutions reach out to everybody, because they are the bodies that actually ensure quality and build capacity. And I think it's really good to see Anil from RICS here and from the Institute of American Architects, because I think to date they've been slightly peripheral to some of the conversations about collaboration. So it's great to see you both here.
Thank you very much, Jill. Let's see if we have any more questions. Oh, great, Kennedy.
I just wanted to add something based on what my colleague has said. It's always encouraged that we have most in terms of professional bodies and even MSMEs join GlobalABC. This is an open-ended platform that has a lot of resources, not just for its members, for wider use in the construction sector. So we encourage associations and professional entities to ensure that you register and join as members of the Global ABC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. Yes, please, Jamie.
Yeah, Anil, please. So we're doing a huge amount of capacity building. It's not enough, but we're doing a lot. Please make your members aware of the Edge learning platform. We can share links. We can share dates in different regions of when the training's happening, both at the university level, at the expert level. So very, very happy to do that. And to Alexander's comment on the insurance industry, completely agree, right? The advisory and frankly historic standard setting role of the insurance industry has been really, really important. Ultimately, that has to link to the underwriting piece. So there's a huge strength in the advisory and the standard setting. The weakness, equally on the counter side, is the underwriting because it's annual premiums. And so actually, there isn't a sufficient insurance cost curve being baked into the life of the building because its insurance premiums are being quantified and paid year on year, right? So there are both strengths and weaknesses in the model.
Thank you, Jamie. Do we have any more interventions or questions from the audience? Yes, please.
I just wanted to add another aspect. We just released our 6th edition of the RICS Sustainability Report. And one of the headlines is that there is some decline in interest in sustainability. We track a sustainable building index over 6 years. I live outside of DC, so it's a bit tough for me to say. But I think the interest in the US has declined from a net positive 40 to a net positive of 11. So the question here is, how do we keep going and maintain momentum in not only Global South, but in some markets where due to policy changes, things are looking different? Is it just a blip, or do you think there's a longer term issue?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. Roxana.
I would be curious to read that report, statistics, to know where, in which geography and in which sector. I have more question about that particular remark, because I've seen other reports, more specifically in Europe, where I come from, that show that actually a vast majority of the private sector, for instance, many companies are not so keen with the regulation effort going on right now in Europe to water down reporting requirements on sustainability. So these are just curious to know more. I'm just coming back from Green Build conference where I was last week in Los Angeles, and what I saw gave me a lot of hope. It might not be the majority, but I think the question that comes is like, how can we, whatever the state is, how can those initiatives and that goodwill move from niche to norm, right? And we've spoken a lot about the role of local actors, local communities, cities, and we know there was this event right prior to COP in Rio. Perhaps part of your answer really lies at the local level and working with states in the US, specifically regional authorities, local authorities, and really tapping into both their procurement power might be one way, but also working with the range of stakeholders and creating ecosystems and communities, I think is also another way to maintain momentum, right? Because alone, whether it's a huge company alone, cannot do it. So both going down at the local level and tapping into the power of ecosystems and communities might be a way forward.
One point I may add to answer, I think, and it's part of this action paper, is to put the people's interest. Because if we are just on the carbon compliance, yes, we have to do it. There will be a lot of sticks. But I think if you have the ask people, and it's across many, of course, housing, but you take education. If you want good education, you need acoustic in a classroom. You will not learn to stay there in this room for 1 year. So acoustic of a classroom is a very demanding job to be a teacher, and you want the kids to be well educated, you need acoustic on top of good carbon emissions, good thermal comfort. Same in healthcare. So I think putting the people first, and it's top 6 in the action paper, moving from compliance to desirability, sustainable construction, will be another dynamic that we need to promote. And I think the regulators, the governors, the mayors get it, because they have to take care of people. So I think the people, it's the biggest driver. And I would encourage all of us to think always about that, not only the compliance on carbon, on low carbon emissions.
Thank you very much, Benoit. We have a question from the gentleman from the insurance industry.
From the advisory and consulting industry from Zurich.
Yes.
A little different, but true. Quick response to that. When we're talking about the discourse on sustainability, yes, in the US, that discourse has gone down for obvious reasons, but it doesn't mean the discourse needs to be derailed. And the one way that we can have whole discussions about this topic without ever saying the word sustainability and without ever saying the word climate, we should be talking about the return on investment. We should be talking about what are the financial quantifiable impacts when we have disruptions. So one of the most compelling pieces of data that we use in our team is a JP Morgan Chase econometric study that was published this past summer on the ROI of adaptation, which puts the full bandwidth at adaptation from at the most primitive basic level 3-to-1 up to 43-to-1. Now, you don't have to say climate, you don't have to say sustainability, but sit me in front of a CEO and ask him or her and say, what business school taught you that it's okay to be paying 3, 5, 7, 15, 22, 40-to-1 on disruption? Because it's affecting the bottom line of how we build, where we build, and what information we put into the design-build process. So this is really, if we have no other vocabulary to use, the vocabulary of economic impacts and ROI is, I think, one of the most compelling.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that intervention. And some people here at the COP says this is also not just the implementation COP, but also the COP of narrative. So it's all about how we frame things to get around some obstacles that have been, or the bumps in the roads, the backlash, or whatever you want to call it, of sustainability. So, do we have a final question before we go to the concluding remarks? We're all good so far? Okay, so then it's my pleasure to introduce here and welcome on stage Yves-Laurent Sapoval, who's Ministerial Delegate for Sustainable Cities and Urban Envoy of Territories, Ecology and Housing, France. So please step up for your concluding remarks, and thank you. Please give the panelists a warm hand. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I have the floor, but not the mic. Blah, 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 blah. That's my speech. Okay. Now, thank you for the floor, and thank you for the mic. Concluding a roundtable like this one is just like trying to assemble a puzzle that is not only a puzzle, that is I was thinking, I think I can call it an energetic puzzle, where every piece is so full of energy that when you touch it, it's just like moving, and you have to try to find a place to put this all together. So there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of force gathered here of really willing people. Nevertheless, I think with whatever we do, we are only touching a drop of water compared to the flow of ongoing unsustainable construction and buildings. And we need to be really aware of the fact that we have work to do collectively, and this work will only be done if we collectively find a way to work together and to align and to know what we're doing. So there's no magic stick. I think there's no one solution. There's no magic thing. We need to work on several things, and all the people around the table are obviously working on several things. We need to work on the demand side. And the demand side is really still there is some work to do. I just want to thank the World Green Building Council for the work that they have been doing, but I just want to recall here that the buildings breakthrough is not from Glasgow. The buildings breakthrough is from COP28. Why is that so? Because you had to advocate for 2 years to get the buildings breakthrough. You had to do this collectively, and we finally did it. So the work that we've been doing on this buildings breakthrough, compared to the others, is only a 2 years work. And it's incredible the work that has been done. So thank you for that, but just keep in mind that in terms of demand side, advocacy still has to be, we still have to advocate. I was talking to someone about just transition. Just transition, now there's discussion there. They don't talk about buildings and cities really. Now, I mean, it's just very general discussions, but buildings and cities are at the heart of just transition. So global advocacy is still very important. Thank you to advocate for passive solutions, which is the only solution, and also for this idea that we are trying to set up since years to work on demand solutions on the government side and to create local alliance for buildings and construction that we are trying to do. So this is for the, let's say, the demand side. On the offer side, there is also a lot of work to do, because there is also a lot of innovation and solutions to be made available. And as you said, capacity buildings for all architects, engineers, etc. If you really want to get to the point. And we also need to work on low-tech solutions, because we will not be saving the world with high-tech solutions at this point. There's many countries where low-tech solutions has to be valued, and often low-tech solutions are, in the meantime, adaptation and resilience and mitigation, which is and adapted to the ground, which is very, very, very important. But the point I want to make here is the point that we need to link demand and offer. And this is what I would call accessibility. And accessibility goes with a lot of conditions. It goes with transparency. We need to know what we are looking for. So this is the whole purpose of what has been done here by the World Green Building Council, how we collectively agree on some vocabulary. We need to work on know-how. We need to work on finance. I just want to remind you that Article 6 and Article 2.1.c are not implemented in the building sector yet. So we are trying to work on this question, and we will be pursuing this, how to implement Article 2.5.c to align all finance with the Paris Agreement. And I just want to point out that that real estate is half of what we collectively possess. Real estate is half of the global wealth. And if we just have a figure just in mind, if we think that we probably have to do 10% of the value of a building to pass the climate wave, okay, both on adaptation and mitigation, so it's a value. It is a global wealth variation of 5%. So I mean, the magnitude is absolutely enormous, and we are still competing to have a buildings pavilion at COP. That's incredible, I think. And we are working also regarding to the insurance. We are working with the OECD, and a report will soon be released on the impact of climate on the real estate sector, on the finance of real estate sector, and I think it's going to be a very interesting one. So we still have a lot of work to do collectively. We have now, thanks to the work that we have been doing together, we have a structure, we have a framework. We have the GlobalABC like an umbrella where everybody aligns and everybody gathers to discuss solutions. And we have many things. And please come and bring your solutions and bring your reflections to the GlobalABC, trying not to duplicate, but trying to enrich always the debate. We have a common vision through the Déclaration de Chaillot. This is also a common vision that was adopted by 60 governments. There is no other sectoral approach that has this kind of engagement and this kind of agreement of governments. So it's very important. We have front runners with the buildings breakthrough. The buildings breakthrough is really the front runners of what is going to change. It's 30 countries with, if I remember well, about 20 initiatives supporting it. And this is the front runners for 2030 with a very concrete goal. And we also have a framework through the ICBC, and a place now since yesterday, because it began yesterday really, we now have a space to endorse by governments all the initiatives that you are bringing. So hopefully the definition of near zero and resilient building will be adopted at the next ICBC. We had yesterday a very productive session with the launch of a world championship for energy savings in the buildings. We had many engagements and very concrete results from yesterday. So this is driving the way, and I think we're going the right way. Still, we have some work to do. We will only succeed if we succeed into assembling this living puzzle and and securing the energy that is on each of these pieces of the puzzle, and trying to give this a global framework, which I think now we have. So it's only time to act. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Yves Laurent. And thank you all for your interventions here during this session. Especially a warm thank to the speakers, of course, and also to the hosts of this panel, the UNEP Cool Coalition and the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. And don't forget to bring your action paper with you when you leave. Otherwise, you can download it if you don't have room in your bag. It's been a pleasure moderating this session, even if it's been a bit sticky and a bit hot. But the content really outnumbered the discomfort of the heat here. So excellent to listen to all of you. Thanks again. And let's just continue this important work. Thank you.